It's been an honor to work with you all this year. I do know we have some members that have to exit early, so we will be somewhat quick. But again, I appreciate working with you all. Hope everybody has a Merry Christmas. Co-Chair, you got anything?
I have nothing.
It's going to be a great meeting, guys. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Senator Rocky Adams. Senator Thayer.
Here.
Senator Yates. Representative Bridges. Representative Frazier Gordon. Yes. Representative Grossberg.
Present.
Senator West.
Here.
Representative Lewis.
Here.
We have a quorum.
With a quorum being present, the subcommittee is duly constituted to do business. On the item is approval of the minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Without objection, so ordered. Please call the first regulation.
Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority, 11 KAR 8030, with staff suggested.
This regulation is being amended to increase the maximum scholarship award amounts for the fall, spring, and summer terms and increase the per credit hour rate for students enrolled less than full time. The staff suggested amendment amends various sections to comply with the drafting and formatting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A and to correct citations.
Would you please identify yourselves for the record?
Miles Justice, General Counsel for KIA.
Becky Gilpatrick, Director of Student Aid for KIA.
Thank you. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendment? Is there a second?
Second.
Without objection, so ordered. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee? Seeing none, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please call the next regulation.
Personnel Cabinet, 101 KAR 210 Emergency and Ordinary. Neither of these have additional amendments.
101 KR 210 E&O, both amend to add and incorporate by reference the 2024 Plan Year Handbook. Additionally, the ordinary regulation deletes the 2023 Plan Handbook.
Would you please identify yourselves for the record? Thank you.
Chris Chamness, Deputy Commissioner for the Department of Employee Insurance.
Will Adams, Legal Counsel for the Department.
Thank you all for coming. There are no amendments to this regulation. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee? Seeing none, thank you all for coming. Please call the next regulation.
Board of Optometric Examiners, 201 KAR 5005, with staff suggested amendment.
201 KR 5005 establishes fees, including fees for initial application and licensure, license by endorsement, renewal, late renewal, duplicate license renewal certificate, reinstatement administrative processing, insufficient funds, license verification list, and individual license verification. A $500 fine for noncompliance with the continuing education requirements and material incorporated by reference. The staff amendment amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
Would you please identify yourselves for the record?
Yes, sir. Dr. Joe Ellis. Dr. Joe Ellis from Benton, Kentucky. I'm the Vice President of the Kentucky Board of Optometric Examiners.
I'm Christy LeMay, and I'm the Executive Director of the Kentucky Board of Optometric Examiners.
Thank you all for coming today. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendment? Is there a second? Second. Without objection, so ordered. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Co-Chair.
Thank you. Whenever we see fee increase, flag goes up. When was the last time the fees were increased? Roughly, I don't have to have an exact
To my recollection, about 3 or 4 years ago. 3 or 4 years ago.
And are these significant increases in fees?
Senator West, most of these fee increases are actually they were being used, but they weren't codified. So the current board said we need to make sure we get these codified in regs, and LRC asked us to make it more standardized that a person can look and see.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you all for coming. Please call the next regulation.
Board of Veterinary Examiners, 201 KAR 510, 512, 514, 516, 550, 552, 560, 701, 702, and 750, all with staff suggested amendments.
201 KR 16 510, 512, 514, 516 are being amended to update statutory references, increase fees, and enable the board to implement new programs. 16550 is being amended to update statutory references, add clarifying definitions, clarify that eligible animal shelters have a mission to support the county or municipality with animal control needs, and clarify that animal shelters eligible for a KBVE certificate do not include handling, management, and transport of wildlife. 16552 is being amended to update statutory references, add additional options for the redirection of wildlife, add limitations on the office stock for all controlled substances, and format the requirements for easier understanding. 16560 is being amended to clarify renewal requirements, add details about requirements for the EBI course, and reorganize the section on background checks. 16701 establishes standards regarding the contents of medical records for animal patients. 16702 establishes standards regarding basic requirements for veterinary surgery. 16750 establishes the level of supervision required for various veterinary medicine tasks assigned by a supervisor veterinarian to a licensed veterinary technician or veterinary assistant. The staff suggested amendments amend various sections to comply with the drafting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A, delete or correct statutory citations, delete or correct cross-references, and make technical changes.
Thank you all for coming today. Please identify yourselves for the record.
Michelle Shane, Executive Director, Board of Veterinary Examiners.
Dr. John Park, Chairman of the Board of Veterinary Examiners.
Thank you. There are staff amendments. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendments? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee? Seeing none, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Told y'all it's going to be a quick meeting today.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Thank you very much.
Please call the next regulation.
Board of Nursing, 201 KAR 20056 and 220. 220 has a staff suggested amendment.
201 KR 2056 amends to permit the board to request evidence of the APRN's current national certification, remove the notice of expiration of certification, and permit the board to impose hearing costs if the results are in the board's favor. 201 KR 2220 amends to update forms incorporated by reference. The staff amendment amends Section 5 to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
Would you please identify yourself for the record?
Good afternoon, Jeff Prather, General Counsel, Board of Nursing.
Thank you for coming today. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendment? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee? Seeing none, thank you for coming. Please call the next regulation.
Board of Physical Therapy, 201 KAR 22053. This does not have additional amendments.
This regulation was amended to specify that the diagnosis included in an evaluation is a physical therapy diagnosis.
Would you please identify yourself for the record?
Yes, Stephen Curley, Executive Director for the Kentucky Board of Physical Therapy.
Thank you for coming. Would you? There are no amendments on this regulation. Are there any members with questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming. Please call the next regulation.
Board of Social Work, 201 KAR 23055, 160 and 170, all with staff suggested amendments.
201 KR 23055 is being amended to update cross-references. 23160 establishes the distinction between clinical and non-clinical social work under a temporary permit and allows for a certified social worker who is permitted to provide clinical social work to be able to move from the temporary permit to a full licensure. 23170 establishes directions for social workers who use telehealth and includes training, informed consent, and directives for social workers to abide by state and federal law regarding telehealth services. The staff suggested amendments amend various sections to comply with the drafting and formatting requirements of KRS 13A, add statutory citations, add incorporated material, and make technical changes.
Okay, so on this one, we do have an organization wants to speak against. If you all will, though, first, if you want to identify yourselves for the record.
Mark Kelly, Executive Director of the Kentucky Board of Social Work.
Hank Cecil, Chair, Kentucky Board of Social Work.
Thank you all very much. There are staff amendments. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendments? Is there a second?
Second.
Without objection, so ordered. So real quick, you all just want to give us a rundown about what this regulation does, and then we'll let the other group come up to speak, or would you rather them come up first and then you address their concerns?
Let's address their concerns.
Okay. So it looks like we have the Children's Alliance, Michelle Sanborn. If you want to come to the table, please. Hit the button on the mic in front of you and please proceed. Mic is yours.
Chair Lewis and Subcommittee, thank you for allowing me to speak on 2 social work regulations, the temporary permission to practice and telehealth social work practice.
Is your mic on? Is there a green light on?
Yeah. My name is Michelle Sanborn, and I'm the president of the Children's Alliance, and would like to thank the Kentucky Board of Social Work for drafting these regulations and working to ensure our at-risk children and families have access to these needed services. Once the Children's Alliance learned that the Kentucky Board of Social Work was not making any amendments to our proposed regulations, we went back and reviewed the comments we initially submitted. Many of the comments we submitted were clarification and wording suggestions, minor revisions that we felt would improve the clarity and implementation of these regulations. However, there were also comments we believe must be addressed to be effective and for effective implementation. For that reason, I come to you today to request these regulations be deferred to allow additional time to collectively work to resolve our concerns. I want to provide as rationale for this request a few of the bigger yet easier to understand concerns with 201 KR 23170, the Telehealth and Social Work Practice Regulation. 1, this regulation defines teletherapy as the practice of clinical social work. The definition for teletherapy is not the practice of clinical social work. It is the use of technology to practice clinical social work. This regulation, as currently written, will allow clinical social work or mental health treatment providers to provide therapy via email, text, chat, fax, and artificial intelligence. And while we welcome the flexibility and innovation for the board to expand the definition of telehealth, there are no guidelines or parameters defined per statute that would ensure appropriate delivery of these electronic means. A little more complicated and harder to explain is the concern the definition of electronic social work service is too broad. Based on this definition, if a person uses technology-enabled modalities and other electronic means to provide information to the public, that person is providing an electronic social work service. The board indicated that it's implied that this definition only applies to individuals who is licensed and certified by the social work statutes. Unfortunately, while I believe this current Board of Social Work does not intend to go after people like me and you who use technology to provide information to the public, which is now practicing social work without a license, we know a previous Kentucky Board of Social Work refused to issue license to young social workers and providing social work, not clinical, but just social work services without a license. In addition, those individuals were fined for every month they had worked providing social work services without a license. Furthermore, the board would not issue a license until those exorbitant fines were paid. So with this broad definition of electronic social work service has the potential for severe consequences to those seeking to obtain a social work license. And the Children's Alliance believes it's not in the best interest of Kentucky to place what could be a significant barrier for those trying to get a social work in the social work field at a time when we so desperately need clinicians. As further rationale for this request, I would like to voice my concern that the required statement of consideration, which was only provided to the Children's Alliance less than 2 weeks ago, did not provide any explanation as to why our comments were not addressed. The Children's Alliance, at the Children's Alliance, have submitted thousands of comments over the course of the 17 years that I've been employed there. And each time we've received a statement of consideration per the statute that lists each of our comments and a corresponding response from the promulgating body, indicating they had amendments as a result of our comment and explain why and why not. These are only a few of the reasons the Children's Alliance is asking the subcommittee to defer the regulation. Because the issues are at hand are substantial, if these regulations cannot be deferred, we'd ask the subcommittee to find the regulation deficient so that a new regulation addressing these concerns can be filed. So for the sake of time, I'll stop here unless we need to walk through. There was a handout provided to you early with some of our continuing concerns.
Mark, Kelly, would you like to have a rebuttal on that, and then we'll open the floor to questions from members?
Well, the purpose of the regulation was to eliminate barriers for our social workers to be able to have flexible regulations to do their work. Their work can be very overwhelming. There's a lot to do, and we wanted to keep it flexible because we can't be out in the field with them, and we could provide guidance to them as a board, but the regulation was left flexible. And as far as the Children's Alliance comments go, which I have huge respect for the Children's Alliance, we felt like their comments were too restrictive for what we were trying to do with the regulations and keeping them flexible for the social workers in the field.
First of all, thank you everyone for all the work you do, and Ms. Sanborn, your advocacy. I appreciate that, and appreciate your 17 years of service, I believe it was. That being said, I understand the importance of having flexibility as well. So I received your comments, your email last Thursday, I believe, and I had staff reach out to the board, and you all answered my questions, and I thought they were valid. We also received comments from you 10 minutes before the meeting started. It's really hard to review that in that amount of time.
Those were the same ones that I provided you in there. I just wanted to make sure the rest of the committee had those.
Sure. Thank you. At this time, I have no intention of making a motion for deferral or deficiency. I understand that, but I would open the floor to any members that have questions or comments. Senator Rocky Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so why didn't you, it's under 170, it says not amended after comments. Why didn't you all respond in writing about the issues that were placed before you?
Well, we sent an SOC that stated that we were not going to adopt the comments in any of the regulation. And we thought that was sufficient response for the situation.
And so, as you know, we have struggled with trying to find social workers and keep social workers engaged. They are so critical to our frontline vitality with so many in our population that struggle. So your testimony here today is that these regulations will not place in any way, shape, or form a burden on the social work community from either getting licensed or being able to do their job. Is that what your testimony is? This in no way will hinder expanding our social work community.
No, this will encourage participation in the social work profession. Along with this regulation of telehealth, we have the temporary permit regulation. And what we've done is change it completely to where people can file for temporary regulation if they're unable to pass the exam for licensure, so that they can go ahead and get into the field and practice, because we need them. And that was one of the reasons why that we changed our temporary permit regulation, so that more people would be welcomed into the profession.
So you're saying that you will not be back in front of us amending these regs? Because, I mean, here we work on children's issues and advocacy issues all the time, and we are constantly coming back session after session to literally change a comma or to do an and to an or. And so you're saying that these regs in front of us are perfect?
They will function in the capacity that they are needed.
So they're perfect. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that they're perfect.
Okay. I hope you would say they're perfect.
Well, I can't say that they're perfect because, it's impossible. That's one of the reasons why we kept them flexible, is because we can't solve for every problem out in the field. Social workers have to think quickly on their feet, and we didn't want to hinder them in any way from being able to make decisions on their own.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Thayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when the Children's Alliance comes to the table and says they have a problem with regulations, that creates concern for members of the committee. And then especially when my colleague, Senator Rocky Adams, tells me that she agrees that there are problems, because this is right in her wheelhouse and she's fighting for these issues every day. Do you feel like you had enough access to the administration to have your voice heard? That's part A. And part B is, do you think you could use a little more time if we defer this regulation today to work with the administration to try to get it right? More perfect, since, we're, the whole more perfect union kind of thing, since we're wordsmithing it here today. And you never really did answer Senator Adams' question, to be fair. So my question is to you, ma'am.
I would love to defer this reg.
I make a motion we defer the regulation.
Motion and a second being made. You want to go into it? Real quick before we go to that, my co-chair does have a question or comment.
I've got a question. I don't want to get in the way of a motion, but hopefully I intend with this question to get more information here. Tell me if I'm correct. This is for the administration. Before this reg, currently we really don't have any regs surrounding telehealth. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct.
So it's kind of wild west when it comes to this. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, you're correct. That's one of the things that we wanted to do, was update the telehealth reg that had been on the books since 2000. And so we took great care in creating the telehealth regulation as is, and we wanted to make sure that we were assisting our social workers and doing no harm to the clientele as well.
So with the telehealth reg, we're setting up a framework that wasn't previously there.
Right. Yes.
And providing some, informed consent, training, informed consent, basically a roadmap. That if you want to do telehealth, this is what you need to do. Okay.
Exactly.
So next question to the Children's Alliance. Clearly, that's a good objective, yes. Right? I mean, we want some directive in that space. So I'm assuming you're not against that.
No, we're not against that.
What would be your opinion of how would you make it better, I guess?
So our concern is around the expansion of telehealth therapies to fax or maybe artificial intelligence. Those things are now being expanded to allow for those services, but there's really no parameters per the statute that would kind of give guidance on the delivery of those services.
So could we tweak the reg further to take that into account and allow for some of these other things?
Yes.
Okay. I believe you want to talk, sir.
Yes, please, if you don't mind. Again, you zeroed in on that. We don't have anything right now. So it is the Wild West out there, and social workers have asked us for this. And
could you pull that mic a little bit closer?
I'm sorry. We had legal counsel on this. We tried to look at all the statutes and crafted the best we could to assist social workers with what they're already challenged to use in the field, and try to craft something that we can, again, like Mark said, to be flexible, but to give them some kind of roadmap that they don't have right now. They're under demand to use a lot of technology, and they wanted guidance. We have over 7,000 licensees right now, and not one of them, every one that I heard from on this one said, thank God you're finally giving us a map to go with to help us out there with our practice, with our work. And we really appreciate that. So, it's really hard to write something like this. And I have a background in technology. I have a couple of master's degree. So that was part of how to write it. We had the legal side as well as the advantage of having a technical side to write something, and a resource to seek the technical ways of how to write this for our social workers who were asking for it. And since we haven't had one, and we're obligated to have one, we feel strongly we need it now, and to delay it. You know, we'd rather not have to be back here. We can't ever say anything's perfect. I'm sorry. I wish I could say something was perfect. You know, I really would. I don't know of a perfect statute out there. You know, this is our attorney said this was a good place for us to start. Said, you know, go with it. Looked at the comments and advised us to say, we'll just keep it to what we've got, so that we have that flexibility to not overburden our social workers out there and restrict them with what they can do. And how that works is how this came about.
That answers my question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Coach Scher. Representative Dina Frazier, Gordon.
Thank you. Are both of you aware that I carried the bill, and I believe it was during COVID, it was 2020, that we expanded our telehealth services and set forth all of the regulations as far as whether it was initial contact or a follow-up contact and that type of thing? Did that not apply to your situation?
It did during the COVID emergency, but we needed to tailor things specifically to social work.
But the bill was not just during, it was not an emergency regulation, and it was not just during the pandemic, it was moving forward.
Well, we still felt like that there was not enough guidance for our social workers specifically, that we felt like we needed to update the telehealth reg to help them. Because there is so much different technology that's being used right now.
Yeah, so is this telehealth different than any other medical practice telehealth? And are there ramifications, or is it spelled out as far as, can you use a manual form of communication like the emails? Can you use that on an initial contact as well? Yes. Or hasn't a relationship already been established with the patient? Yeah. Could you go into that just a little bit?
Go ahead, Hank.
Well, I'm not sure I understand what you're asking, because it is like a person can reach out to a social worker for services electronically or in person or on the phone. And that can be the initial contact.
A relationship with a provider usually has to be established.
Right. But they can initially reach out by email and sometimes by text asking for services. Is that what you're talking about?
That's what I'm referring to, but right. I believe that's outside of the bill that we
passed. It says unless, it's the way our attorney says, unless the promulgating authority has statutory regulations to promulgate telehealth, and we do under KRS 335158.
Okay, and we did list the boards.
Yeah, right, you did list the boards.
That each board could.
And we have that. So we felt we had the statutory authority to proceed.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, so there are three regulations up. The first one is inactive status of license, KAR 023055. I'm safe to say none of this has anything to do with that one, so not a question on that. The two in question is the KAR 023160 and the KAR 023170. Senator, are those the two regulations, Senator Thayers, those are the two regulations that you would like to find a motion for deferral?
Yes.
Okay.
Would you like me to restate my motion?
No, you're good. I just wanted to clarify. Would you all as an agency be willing to defer for next month to try to work on these?
Well, our social workers are asking us to make a decision. And, when we have pursued this, for a while and worked on it for a while, and we feel like it's ready to go. As far as our social workers go, like they're expecting us to provide them with guidance, and that's all we're trying to do.
Right.
Sure. So just for our members, and if maybe they have any questions or concerns, and there could be an agency amendment, just so we can educate our members, would you be willing to defer until January, these two regulations in question? Yes, sir.
On the temporary reg, I'm not sure what's the problem is to defer on that one, because we've had this as an emergency reg. We've had experience with it for 5 months. Is that right?
6 months.
6 months. So if we haven't had any problems,
no,
I'm not sure why deferral on that would, and that's not been the question. It's been more the question on the telehealth reg, not the temporary reg.
So the temporary permission to practice, there was an e-reg that we made many comments on that we never received a statement of consideration on. We made our similar comments and additional comments on the ordinary reg. Some of the things that we are concerned about, and that reg really, there's several things. One, the fee that's stated in there, that has to be done. There's nowhere in regulation or statute where that fee is, so we'd like that to be included so we know what the fee is. There's a requirement for 1 week of supervision, but it really doesn't allow for illnesses or vacations, so we're asking for an additional supervisor so that we can do that, and asking for a provision around emergencies or illnesses. Today, I think the practice is folks call Mark, and Mark allows for that if there's emergencies or things and they can't get it done in a week. But the concern that we have as those that are implementing these regs is not everybody knows that they can call Mark. Mark's not on 24/7 and around, and so we would just like some provision that the board does give those exceptions for those things. In my mind, I feel like we're setting those social workers up to not be able to meet this reg if we don't do that. Also, there's nothing about supervision under Section 3 for those temporary permits that need supervision, and if they're not independently licensed, they should have supervision, and there's nothing in that section. There's several things you can see in the handout that are on the form that are not included in the regulation, and a few minor things, it's one thing, but there's some pretty big things that are on the form that should probably be defined or at least included in the reg as a requirement if they're going to obtain this license. So that's those are the things that we have with that
so
one.
These two regulations, the issues affecting them are intertwined. Again, gentlemen, there has been a motion for deferral. The agency would have to approve that deferral. That being said, be mindful that should that motion fail, and this will be back in front next month, but should the motion fail, the next potential motion could be deficiency. Would you like to defer till next month?
I guess
and try to work out any issues or answer any questions from members.
I guess, but I'd just like to say with the temporary regulation, it's already being utilized as is, and we've had no complaints or no problems, we've been approving temporary clinical social workers, for 6 months with the current paperwork. So I'm not sure, but if it is the will of the subcommittee for us to defer, then we will defer.
Thank you. We'll have our members with questions reach out. I do encourage both of you all to try to work out any rest and go from there. I believe my colleague in the House, Representative Deanna Frazier Gordon, had some issues as well. But, Co-Chair?
I have no comment.
Yeah, Yeah, we'll work out the differences, come back next month. I appreciate you being willing to defer that request. Thank you all for your time. We'll be in touch. Please call the next regulation.
Energy and Environment Cabinet, Department for Environmental Protection. 401 KAR 42-250 with staff suggested amendment.
401-42-250 amends Petroleum Storage Tank Environmental Assistance Fund provisions to increase corrective action-related reimbursement rates, revise the reevaluation process for costs that cannot be completed for established rates, and update incorporated material. The staff suggested amendment amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
Thank you all for coming today. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Tony Hatton. I'm the Commissioner of the Department for Environmental Protection.
Luana Aldridge, Environmental Scientist Consultant for the Department for Environmental Protection.
Thank you all for coming today. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendment? Is there a second? No objections, so ordered. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee? Seeing none, thank you all for coming. Please call the next regulation.
Public Protection Cabinet, Department of Insurance, 806 KAR 17590 with staff suggested amendment.
806 KR 17590 amends to update material incorporated by reference. The staff amendment amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
Would you please identify yourselves for the record, please?
Abigail Gall, Department of Insurance.
Sean Orm, Department of Insurance.
Thank you all for coming today. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendment? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee? Seeing none, thank you all for coming. Please call the next regulation.
Horse Racing Commission, 809 KAR 1002 and 3. 809 KAR 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, all with staff suggested amendments. Continuing on with horse racing is 810 KAR 2, 100 and 810 3010, both with staff suggested amendments.
809, 1002, and 1003, 809, 10001 through 10008, 810 2100, and 810 3010, establish Kentucky Sports Wagering Program, including definitions, licensure, including licensure for horse racing associations that also offer sports wagering, wagering requirements, control standards, oversight, responsible gaming provisions, and enforcement and hearings. Additionally, standards are established for a self-exclusion list for sports wagering and horse racing. The staff suggested amendment amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A. Staff amendments for 809-1002 list the Commission's criteria for approving temporary licensure and corrective form. Staff amendments for 809-1003 list the Commission's criteria for approving transfer of a temporary license and includes submission information for applicants. Staff amendments for 809-10005 include the Commission's criteria to approve wagering kiosk location and for moving kiosks, and for an operator's license, require a certificate of occupancy in lieu of ADA and fire prevention requirements. Staff amendments for 809-10005 also clarify that surveillance system inspections shall be at least quarterly. Staff amendments for 809-10006 include the Commission's criteria for prohibiting records destruction and clarify that layoff wagers shall be reported to the Commission daily. Staff amendments for 809-10007 list the Commission's criteria to approve a third party to review a responsible gaming program. Staff amendments for 810-100 include the Commission's criteria for public notice approval and clarify the reporting of self-exclusion information.
Thank you all for coming today. Would you please identify yourselves for the record?
Thank you for having us today. I'm Jamie Eads with the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission.
Travers Manley, Deputy General Counsel of the Racing Commission.
Hans Stokey, Director of Sports Wagering for the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission.
Thank you all for coming today. There are staff amendments. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendments? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. We do have a question from our resident horse racing expert, Senator Thayer.
I'm not the only one, but thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to say that the Racing Commission has done a terrific job implementing sports wagering according to legislative intent, and I believe Jamie and her team need to be applauded for that. And it just goes to show you I'm not negative towards all current administration agencies because the Racing Commission is doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. My co-chair has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. these are the regs to carry out sports wagering in Kentucky. My main question is, are there going to be multiple tranches of regs, or is this phase one? Where are we? Is there going to be multiple phases, I'm assuming? How will that work?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. These are the O regs to replace the E regs. There are only significant differences in 007, which is our problem gaming. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Responsible gaming.
Yeah.
But I would imagine this is a fluid market for us, and we'll probably constantly be reviewing the regulations to see when we might need to come back with changes. But
I
this is the
guess
full
my main
set.
question is do we have other regs teed up?
No.
Or is this kind of it for now?
This is it for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
While
Thank
we
you.
live in it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Grossberg.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo the sentiments of Senator Thayer. I still am blown away by how effectively and efficiently you guys were able to implement such a stark change in policy. And frankly, if someone came from another state and visited Kentucky and went to one of the sports wagering facilities, they would not believe how recent of an implementation this is. I mean, it is absolutely seamless. Every facility, you have the impression that it's been there all along. It's probably the the only piece of legislation in the Commonwealth that I've yet to hear a complaint about since its implementation. So my hat's off to you guys on that. And I just want to make clear that the support of the governor and its administration is a bipartisan issue. So thank you, Senator.
Thank you all for coming. Please call the next regulation.
Cabinet for Health and Family Services, Department for Public Health, 902 KAR 4 120, 45 065, and 070, all with staff suggested amendments.
902-4120 was amended to revise definitions and provider qualifications, to add the options for teleservice delivery methods, and to remove the material incorporated by reference to reflect programmatic changes. The staff suggested amendment amends Section 1 to revise the definition of local implementing agency to align with the provider qualifications established in Section 3, and amend Section 3 to remove provisions that are no longer needed. 902-45065 was amended to specify that a studio owner is required to maintain the registration for a tattoo artist, even if that individual is not considered an employee of the studio, and to update definitions, material incorporated by reference, and other language. 902-45070 was amended to add that a body piercer may pierce the ear of a minor with parental consent, to prohibit piercing the genitals of a female under the age of 18, to specify other age-related piercing requirements, to specify that a studio owner is required to maintain the registration for a piercer, even if that individual is not considered an employee, and to update definitions, material, and other language. Additionally, the staff suggested amendments for all three regulations and in various sections to comply with the drafting and formatting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A.
Thank you all for coming today. Please identify yourselves for the record.
I'm Holly LaFavors. I'm the Program Manager for HANDS. Julie Brooks, Regulation Coordinator for the Department for Public Health.
Leslie Cobb, Environmental Health Program Administrator for Public Safety Branch. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming today. There are staff amendments. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendments? Is there a second?
Second.
Without objection, so ordered. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee? Seeing none, thank you all for coming. Please call the next regulation.
Department for Medicaid Services, 907 KAR 3-310 and 907 KAR 9010, Emergency. 3-310 has a staff suggested amendment.
907 KR 3310 establishes community health worker services and reimbursement provisions to comply with House Bill 525 from the 2022 regular session. The amended after comments version amends to make changes for clarity, including to allow an optometrist to function as an ordering provider, expand the criteria for being an ordering or sponsoring provider to potentially allow for additional types of clinicians or facilities to order and request reimbursement for community health worker services, and clarify when a federally funded community health worker is not allowed to bill for Medicaid services. The staff suggested amendment amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
Would you please identify yourself to the record?
Good afternoon, Jonathan Scott, Regulations Coordinator, DMS.
Thank you for coming today. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendment? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Are any questions from the subcommittee? Co-Chair West.
These reimbursement rates for the psychiatric residential treatment facilities, is that a big increase in current rates? Do we know?
It has been raised to be consistent with our surrounding states. So we had done some research into what other states are paying and what the market needs in Kentucky to continue to be viable.
Okay.
So yes, it is. Sorry.
I guess, do we have like a fiscal impact statement or note on that or anything?
We had determined that it is going to be consistent with our allotted budget because a lot of the time we were already doing some single case agreements that were bringing us up to that length, to that rate anyway. So it was a negligible impact just because of we need to make sure that the facilities have the certainty that those rates are going to be there as well. Is that?
Yes, I got that. That answers my question. Thank you.
I had some provider type issues, but I've reached out to the cabinet and just waiting. Statutory issues maybe, but I'll follow back. I just heard about it today. I'm not going to slow it up. Thank you for coming today. Well, any other members with questions? We're good. Thank you for coming. Please call the next regulation. I believe it's the last regulation.
Department for Behavioral Health, Developmental, and Intellectual Disabilities, 908 KAR 2300 with staff suggested amendment.
908-2300 establishes requirements and standards for the administration of the Kentucky Problem Gambling Assistance Fund, including requirements for eligibility, application for funding, monitoring of services provided, certification of treatment professionals, and department responsibilities. The staff suggested amendment amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A and adds treatment of addictions to the list of purposes for which funding may be requested as established in KRS 230.826.
Would you please identify, excuse me, would you please identify yourself for the record, please?
Hi, Katie Marks, Commissioner for the Department for Behavioral Health, Developmental, and Intellectual Disabilities.
Rachel Ratliff, Regulation Coordinator for the Department for Behavioral Health.
Thank you all for coming today. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendment? Is there a second?
Second.
Without objection, so ordered. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee? Thank you all for coming today.
Thank you.
This is the last meeting of 2023. I do appreciate all my members and everybody out there, the few of you left. I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas. I appreciate my co-chair who's helped me out in this new role. With that being said,
The next meeting is scheduled for Monday, January 8th at 1 p.m. After the start of session.
Does anybody have a conflict with that? Seeing none, motion for adjournment. Motion. There we go. Second. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all. Merry Christmas.